Here we go. So I wanted to welcome everybody to our next Lend event conversation series. And I'm Chris Carver, the co-founder and CEO. And today it's been a long time coming, but I've been really excited to have these two on. So without further ado, I want to introduce Lindsay Adler. She's the director of production at Superfly, and Lisa Day, global events manager at InVision. How are you guys doing?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, appreciate it. So before we jump into kind of the meat of this, do you mind expanding on your roles and responsibilities at your respective companies?
Yeah, definitely. So I work to produce kind of a wide variety of events. Superfly was mainly focused on music festivals for many years. So we worked on Outside Lands, Bonnaroo, Clusterfest, and we launched a couple new festivals a couple years ago. Most recently, we've been kind of working more on the agency events, so working with brands like Bravo, Google, Apple, Citi. So it's been kind of a crazy time to work at Superfly just with all the changes, but I mainly work to produce these types of events. So operations and production is kind of my bread and butter.
Nice. And Lisa, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I actually started at InVision as their global events manager back in January of 2020, which it's been a whirlwind since then. If you don't know about InVision, they're a leading digital product design platform that works to bring together design and creative teams to collaborate through their product. Lots of really great products out there, but it's been kind of a total pivot for me in terms of changing industries, coming from an agency background and also from Superfly, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about in a bit. But I work on the growth marketing team as our global events manager, kind of overseeing our own internal event strategy and basically helping to partner and create really unique events for our own brand, and then also partnering with some third-party conferences in more of a sponsorship aspect.
Cool. Yeah, we've used InVision a lot over the years. It's been really cool to see how much it's grown in the last 5 years. Incredible job they've done. Lindsay, can you give me describe what Superfly is? You guys have obviously evolved over the years, and we've had the pleasure of working together and on Outside Lands and Clusterfest, and yeah, give me the lowdown on what Superfly is up to now.
Sure. So we started 20 years ago or so. I think we're most known for being the co-creators of Bonnaroo and Outside Lands. And then, like I mentioned before, just a couple additional festivals that we launched in the last couple of years. We also have an in-house agency, so we work with the brands that I mentioned before to produce events like BravoCon, Google I/O. We did the Apple WWDC Bash. So we've been really fortunate to work with some really awesome brands. Most recently, we've also been working on kind of a different segment or sector of Superfly, which we actually just announced yesterday. It's called Superfly X. So it's focused on the global themed entertainment world. And we have been producing a couple pop-ups surrounding the Friends TV show. And we actually just announced Friends Chicago yesterday, so that'll be really exciting. But yeah, we're just kind of, working through what we can these days when people can't gather in large crowds and what that looks like for us, the industry, and how we can kind of pivot to work on new ideas and new things.
That's awesome. Not to get off topic too much, but what's an experience like that look like? I know you've done a few over the past year. I'm just curious.
Yeah, like the Friends experience.
Yeah. What's that like?
It's a walkthrough experience with set recreations. There's props that fans can interact with. There's a ton of photo ops. It more or less brings the TV show to life.
That's awesome.
Wildly successful in New York City and Boston. So Chicago is next on our trip, and it's gonna be great.
That's cool. And how long was it in New York, or how long?
It was 30 days.
Sorry, how long?
30 days.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. So you guys obviously both cut your teeth at Superfly, and I think it's really interesting to think about the fact that there's a bit of a Superfly mafia alumni. You got, Kat now over at Vice, and You got Molly at DWP and Caitlin at Buku and Hangout. Like, do you guys keep in touch with each other, and what's that like?
Yeah, we're really fortunate to have worked really closely with such badass women that are, they've gone far and wide in the industry. But we definitely keep in contact with a lot of them, if not all. Superfly is definitely has been a bit of a family for most of us, so it's been nice to have those connections.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I have to agree, especially with the summer happening and seeing all these flashback photos from the past, 5-6 years of Bonnaroo and the different, or in Outside Lands and Granduzzi's and Lost Lakes and the different projects that we worked on together, and the different levels of pain and discomfort that we went through being out in the field and figuring out, new events each year. It's fun. It's fun to look back at and then kind of just feel how we are right now and see where we used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you always have that like connection with these people that it's hard to compare with what are in the industry.
Yeah.
So in typical COVID fashion, I have my little son just crying in here. Yeah, he's. So I'm curious, while you guys go on, do you mind talking through about how you got your start in this whole thing, in this career, and what led you to the point you're at now?
Sure. Do you want me to start, Lindsay? All right, cool. So I went to school to study music. I studied voice, and I've always been super interested in music and art. I'm kind of from a music and art family. As soon as I graduated, I knew I wanted to move to New York. So I did that without a job, without any money. And I had some interviews lined up. I had a little bit of savings and enough for a month of rent. And then I kind of went for it, and I got a job my first week being out in New York City. It was kind of wild. It was for like a mom and pop music agency, kind of niche towards like wedding musicians. And I got in working kind of in an admin role and also singing at the time, and kind of knew I wanted to continue down a path of working with artists, designers, music, being in a creative space. So I kind of worked my way through a few different jobs. I went over to Red Bull and got like a real institutional knowledge working for, he's having fun back there. It's highly entertaining to watch. Working for Red Bull for a little bit. And then I moved on to Superfly, starting with them kind of more in the business operations, company operations role, still going out to festivals, kind of just working in a different capacity out there, supporting the people team. And then I knew I wanted to really get out there in the field and start producing events. So I talked with Kat, actually, who we mentioned earlier, and we kind of had a sit down, and she was like, "Are you sure this is what you want to do?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do this." And she's like, "All right, we're going to bring you onto my team then." And I started working for Kat, and it was so awesome. And I had an amazing 5 years at Superfly, and I feel like I'm going into like a soliloquy of my life right now, so apologies. And then after 5+ years, I was just ready for a kind of a change. I was on the road a lot, as Lindsay can relate to. There was not a lot of time being spent in New York where I was actually living. And I decided I wanted to get a little closer to my family. So I moved back to Virginia and then to the DC area, and kind of had a change of pace. Started working for a startup agency called Advocate, wanted to kind of help grow a startup. And then after a year of that, I landed in-house at InVision, and now I'm still here in DC.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And how about you, Lindsay?
Yeah, I've got kind of an interesting beginning in that I always knew I wanted to work in the music industry in some capacity. I didn't quite know where to start. And so I decided that I would go to art school, which lasted for about 2 years. And I decided that wasn't necessarily for me. So I ended up dropping out. I got an internship at Superfly in San Francisco, actually. So I worked in the San Francisco office for about 3 years. I guess during my internship, after my first Outside Lands, I begged them to not let me go. So somehow I was able to convince them to keep me on. And then just started to grow from there. I just started to work on the operations team, going out to a bunch of different festivals, kind of working events all over the US between our festivals and our agency. And I decided to move to New York 2 years ago, which is where our headquarters are. And yeah, I've just continued to grow with the team, and it's been a fun ride.
That's amazing. And so did you guys work together?
Oh yeah.
So when you were working together, what were the roles, and what were you guys working on?
Yeah. Go ahead, Lisa.
What should we start with? I feel like my most memorable first role working with you was at Outside Lands. Mm-hmm. So I was working kind of as an area manager for different IPs at Outside Lands, the Barbary, which was the comedy tent, Gastro Magic, which was our culinary and music and art stage, and then Cocktail Magic, which was originally a Superfly IP that was its own standalone event that we brought to Outside Lands that basically brought together the top mixologists in the Bay Area and featured custom cocktails and kind of bespoke music and also sleight of hand magic. It was pretty fun, and all of them were kind of unique in their own ways. So I kind of oversaw operations for those areas and worked with Lindsay with all of kind of the creative assets that I needed for those spaces at that time. And yeah. Lindsay, it was awesome because we became friends obviously quickly through all of this, and Lindsay was living in the Bay Area at that time, so I had my Bay Area best friend right away, and we had a lot of fun adventures on site and off site.
Yeah. So is that when you started talking about your podcast series that you guys are going to host at some point?
Yeah, it was either, I feel like that we had one day where we were both kind of having a moment and stepped away and went to the horse stables on our bikes, and we really connected then.
Love it.
Yeah, we were roommates for pretty much every show.
Oh wow, that's awesome. That's cool. Well, I'm glad I could have this opportunity to get you guys on here. So kind of fast forward to today, how much do you look at other types of events and other markets for ideas and inspirations? I'm just curious to see how you're kind of creatively inspiring yourself.
Lindsay, go ahead.
Yeah. I think something that's always been really interesting to me is the international world of events. So I went to a show in Mexico City a couple years ago, which was eye-opening in a sense that it was, a similar festival to what we produce in the States. But there was enough differences in terms of sponsorship and how they present themselves on site. And I guess just the international festival landscape is just different enough than the States. And I think we often look a lot at festivals within the United States for inspiration and ideas and to see how they're doing things and operating. But I think it is also important to look outside of the US.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely agree with the international, especially seeing now that some countries are already starting to get back into live events, the way that they're setting up shop. It's pretty cool to see. I'd even say just walking around and seeing what hotels and restaurants are doing and your own city that you're living in, when we are kind of secluded to our own spaces now, is pretty cool to see. People are getting really creative, and you can take inspiration from all of those settings. I will also say at InVision we have obviously there's still a landscape for events, and we'll look at what our competitors are doing, what the Googles are doing, the Amazons, some of those bigger household names to take, especially when at the very beginning of this all, we were kind of looking to them as leaders of okay, what are they doing, and how are we going to kind of follow, but also do this in our own way.
Yeah. It is interesting to see kind of the different areas of the world where things are popping up, and it's such a unique time. It's going to be so interesting to see how things kind of, on the positive side, how creativity will evolve over the next 18 months. I feel like the first, 6 months of all of this, everybody was a bit in shock and deer in the headlights, and now people are starting to, that creativity starting to bubble up. And I think I just feel like there's a ton that all kinds of groups can learn from each other. So, which is really cool why this conversation's fun to have. So take me back to late February of this year, and walk me through what's going through your head, both personally and, as it pertains to your organization.
Sure. So back in February, I was in month 2 of my new job. I was very excited. I was starting to get into the swing of things. Our team was built out. We had our Q1 and Q2 schedules like totally locked in and ready to go. I don't think I mentioned this, but InVision is a fully distributed company. So we don't have an office. Everyone works remotely. And that was like kind of like a really cool, like unique thing. I was really looking forward to after, working in an office for so many years and also being on the road and traveling. Super excited to have more like more control over my schedule and my time during the working day. And I felt like that was like super unique and cool. And I was very excited to be like the only person in my apartment building during the day. So that was fun. I also was very excited about some international travel and getting to kind of see some places I'd never been before.
That's cool. And how about you, Lindsay?
Well, actually, Lisa and I were having dinner. She was in New York for, I think it was an event. Was it your first event?
Yeah, it was my first event series.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she was out, we had dinner, and I guess during that dinner and during that trip, she had found out that their yearly sales conference was canceled. So it was, pretty interesting because I think we all were a bit naive in February. Everybody knew that there was a virus out there and nobody really thought that it was ever going to make its way to the US somehow. So I think that was kind of a first kind of shock for us, at least, just on a personal level of our work being impacted.
Yeah.
I say our because we're friends, but
yeah. And for us, since we're all remote, it was like, oh, I was so excited to be able to finally get to meet my boss in person, my team in person, people who I have never met in person.
Yeah.
And I was like, they're just playing it safe. Like this will pass. Like it'll be like a few months, and then we'll be back on track.
Yeah. So there's people at your company that you've never met for sure, right, Lisa?
I've only met 2 people that work at InVision.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty weird.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And in the events role, I would have had the opportunity to meet more going into like sales dinners and account dinners and things like and account-based events and conferences, but we just never got there. So
yeah. Interesting. And Lindsay, I know, going off a little here, how are you? Are you in finding working remotely? How do you like it?
It's interesting. I think when Lisa actually started in January, it was a very interesting concept to me that her full company was remote. So I feel like I was just asking her questions. I was like, how nice is it to make lunch at home and like 8 hours in the day? And then little did I know that was going to happen to me. But yeah, it's been really nice. I think it's really important to get a nice workspace set up. I definitely thrive when I have a very like clean, like sturdy workspace. So getting like a nice desk and chair was really important. But also I think the best part of it is the time that I get back into my day, just not commuting to Manhattan. So I get, I don't know, maybe an extra 2.5 hours a day without the commute, which has just been spent, doing whatever I want to do, whether it be, I bought a bike because I've been biking a lot. Just getting outside, it's a whole different thing for me.
Your commute was 2.5 hours? Sorry, what was it?
I said, you're forgetting sleeping in, Lindsay.
Yeah. Well, no, I've actually been getting up earlier now because I'm like, I have all of this time. Let's make more of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, my commute was like 45 minutes to an hour each way.
My gosh. I guess that's pretty normal for, New York. So us San Diegans were, I guess if I was in LA, that would be a shorter commute. Wow. And sorry to stay on this a little bit more, but how has your creative process evolved or changed, or has it in all this, Lindsay?
I mean, it is interesting not being able to be in the same room with my team. It's interesting to try to convey ideas across Slack sometimes. Everybody's not as readily available as they felt when you were face to face in the office and could just walk up to them. So I think it's, you know, it's slowed down a little bit in terms of communication, maybe for the better. I've definitely found that I'm able to focus a little bit more when I'm just kind of by myself in my room. And I don't have those taps. So I guess it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I wouldn't say it's increased or decreased. It's
Sure. Yeah. Sure. So I'm curious, how is okay, so we're towards the end of February, early March, around the time you guys were having dinner in New York. How has things changed for you over time? Like reality starts to set in. What's it been like over the past few months?
Yeah, Lisa, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, so I came back from New York and I feel like everything changed like right in that moment. It was crazy. And also considering New York was kind of like the center of the beginning of it all. And I was there and I was like, I wasn't even really thinking twice about it when I was there. Then we got back and it was kind of like first phase was like, okay, this is happening. Everything's being canceled. Like, let's just like take a minute and like pause and like absorb like the shock of what's happening. And then it was like, oh, we have contracts in place with venues and vendors and conferences, and our own events are scheduled, and like we had to come up with a plan. Like right now, people I think that they're still attending these. So we had a couple of our first events, like when it was still kind of in that, like, not everything's canceled yet. Like it might be safe to have like a smaller group together. We really had to like make some decisions and like align as a team on like how on our comfort level of in-person events. And we ended up erring on the safe side, which I look back and I'm like really grateful for, and canceling everything, immediately pivoting to virtual. Luckily being at like an all remote company, we already had a lot of those resources in place, like, you know, a corporate Zoom account, and we have our own whiteboarding tools. So we had some of those tools already like kind of ready to go for us. And we had a lot of those best practices kind of figured out already, just due to our team being all remote all the time. But it wasn't easy, especially coming up with, you know, just aligning on our messaging and why we're doing it. Because there were a lot of people at the time in the world that were still like, I don't believe this is a real thing. Why are you canceling my event? So trying to be empathetic towards everyone, but also, you know, be safe and make the right decision for everyone. Yeah. So it was an overhaul on comms, an overhaul on contracts, and trying to still be a good partner, but while protecting yourself and your own, you know, financial.
Yeah, totally. And how long did that last for you, Lisa? Like that period where you're just, you know, kind of getting everything together?
I feel like it was like 6 weeks, honestly.
Okay.
It was done in phases as it was absolutely immediately needed, and then kind of as things started to settle, start planning more for the future. But as we know, you can't plan for like 2 weeks ahead now these days.
Yeah, it's crazy. And Lindsay, how about you? You came out of the dinner, and what was the next few months like?
Yeah. So my family actually came out to visit me for the first time since I've been in New York, and they came the full week before everything shut down. And so it seemed like every like tourist attraction we wanted to do shut down the day after we visited it. And they had left on Sunday, and then Monday, New York shut down completely. So it was, you know, it was weird. I was out of the office for a week, and then I couldn't go back into the office when I was supposed to come back. It was just all happening really fast. And I think that, you know, we all felt like we knew what was coming at this point, but nobody wanted to actually believe it. For me personally, I think when the South by news hit, that was a moment from myself and a lot of my coworkers or just peers. You know, such a massive event that they pulled the plug on, and you know, nobody thought it would happen to them, and then it happened to all of us, and then it just kind of felt like a domino effect after that. So, you know, we had outside lands. We got on sale with the early bird sale, so people had purchased tickets, and we were kind of holding on hope that August was going to look okay. Nobody really knew what the future was going to look like, and everyone felt hopeful that it would clear up a bit faster than it has. So we continue to have conversations of, okay, if we do this thing, what is it going to look like? If we don't, when do we call it? It was just a lot of back and forth conversation and just trying to figure out the best next steps for something that, uncharted territory that we haven't done
Totally.
in this capacity.
Wow. And when did you really start planning kind of this new phase of Superfly then? Was that before, during, was that just something that you already had going in parallel, or did this, kind of escalate that process?
Yeah, we've been working on it for quite some time now. It definitely, it definitely had been in the works before everything happened, and it actually kind of worked out for us. I guess better because the types of events that we're producing under this Superfly X kind of sector of the company, we have a lot of control over the spaces, just because they're kind of like a museum in a sense that you can control the capacity to a T. So we feel very fortunate that we have these types of projects to work on right now in a world where mass gatherings are not happening.
Totally. Yeah, it's so fascinating to me to see the, you hear a lot of the bad news, but there is like opportunity out there for, I don't want to speak for, a blanket statement, but
Yeah.
we're starting to see it bubble up. I don't know if
Definitely.
you guys feel that same way, but.
Yeah, it's definitely having your ducks in a row and having the right conversations with city officials that you kind of understand what you can do and what you can't do, and just navigating that. Because you definitely, as things are starting to reopen, restaurants, retail stores, people are getting more comfortable getting closer to each other. And they're also getting more comfortable with the health and safety precautions that have been, put in place, masks, distance, timed entry, that kind of stuff. So it's, it is possible.
Yeah. How about you, Lisa? Are you feeling that same way, or what?
Yeah, so right now for InVision, we're still like travel free probably until
Yeah,
2021. So for us right now, it's like virtual events for the rest of the year, and that's kind of how we're planning. We're not doing any
totally.
hybrid events or in person. There are some hybrid events that are out there, I would say, where they're doing recording in studios where maybe thought leadership will go in and do a professional recording. That's a little different, but right now, it's for our company, it's super important that no one has to even question their safety.
Yeah,
So that's just kind of a part of I think the big tech industry in general right now. I'm sure you've seen with a lot of these offices going all
sure.
remote, at least until next summer 2021. So but something that's definitely been interesting, just in terms of the way that people are behaving in events, is people have been super open and transparent with each other, and for executive level events, we're seeing executives showing up and having really cool authentic conversations with each other, and their kids are playing in the background, they're going on mute, they might be having technical difficulties, but everyone's kind of just there and rallying for each other, which has
Yeah.
been really cool, and I think an interesting way for people to just be more transparent and share their own best practices and tactics with each other.
And do you feel I guess my comment was less about, physical events, kind of figuring out a way, and just more about just creativity. So on the virtual side, do you feel like the strategy and offerings are evolving as you learn more, or how's that?
Yeah, well, working for a digital product company that creates a product that our product is meant for people to work collaboratively, whether it's remote, in the office, or whatever, but it's cross-functional. It's for teams to basically communicate and share. So yeah, I'm seeing that this is kind of a good time for us to be elevating our own product and the content we have. We have our own blog, and we actually just released our 10th book, and we have a podcast series. So what we're doing now is taking new releases of content, or old pieces of content that we can bring back, and kind of creating events around them, to just raise awareness and share best practices and resources with our customers and the design community in general.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting, being obviously on the product side in events. It's really, there's so many ways that I think we could go. It's probably our biggest challenges is what avenue do we take at this point, especially without an end in sight. So it's forcing you to be innovative.
Yeah, you have to be innovative because like every week, like Zoom gets duller and more boring.
Yeah.
Like we're just continuing, like we have to continue to like be innovative. And yes, hopefully we'll get back to live events, and we are getting back to some sort of hybrid live events, especially with Superfly X. That's super awesome that you're able to have that kind of control. But for companies that are kind of still doing their own internal event strategy and aren't allowed to be going in that direction, it's just like, how do you make these like interactive, interesting and engaging? Like, how do you get people off mute and on camera and participating and having an actual a good time?
Yeah. So this is kind of a personal question, but how do you guys feel like you're doing, psychologically, mentally, and all of this? Is it a little freeing that it's a little different, or is it Groundhog Day, or where are we at here?
Um, I will say that like at the very beginning, it was kind of like a panic moment. I was like, did my career just evaporate? Like, I was like, I don't think like, and then like, I think about like, I'm just going to be like totally candid. Like, I think about like what jobs I want to do in my life. And I was like, okay, well, what could I do if I wasn't an event producer? Like I've had those thoughts.
Yeah.
I'm like, but no, but like, that's what I want to do. Everything that I want to do is still kind of in that vein. So it's been a little scary, like psychologically, and like definitely anxiety inducing. But like, I feel like whenever I'm getting off the rails and thinking too much in a hole, like, it's just like, take a breath, sit down, do a meditation, go for a run. Like that's how I'm coping with those. Text Lindsay 5 times in a row and see if she's feeling the same way.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been challenging. Same with Lisa. I've just kind of like had these thoughts of, okay, if I need to like make a panic shift, which direction do I go in? And the ideas I've come up with have shocked myself of things that I didn't even know I was interested in. So it's been kind of a fun exercise. But I mean, at the end of the day, just like Lisa, I mean, my passion lies within events and producing. So I'm holding on for dear life.
Yeah, I mean, something tells me that you guys are going to kill it no matter what. And it's interesting because I have these conversations with all kinds of folks across the industry, and I think the skill set that you both have and other folks have is so applicable to so many other things. The project management side, the production side, the creative side, the technical side, all of those things are so applicable. So I just think it's fascinating. Hopefully people realize the capabilities there. One of the things I was going to ask you is you now work on completely different events in so many ways for certain purposes, but you still have operations, you still have strategy, you still have distribution, you still have talent. What do you think the corporate event world can learn from the festival and experiential world? And I don't know if Lisa, you want to take it, Lindsay, you want to take it, but I'm curious.
Go ahead.
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Okay. You just said something that like really stuck to me. I'm sorry if it's backtracking a little bit, Chris, but
yeah,
you're right. Like when you think about events and how integrated they are, there are so many little things that go into them. Like you're saying, like tech, creativity, production, the operations, the database, the financing. Like there's just so many pieces. And I feel like the one thing going into corporate is just like, we're like our own little events hub, like really like within a big B2B, organization. And within the marketing department, events like, I don't want to say this to sound, I'm just going to say it. We're kind of the bottom of the totem pole in a way. Cause like, especially now when there's no live events. So people are like, oh, what's the events team doing right now? Well, we're hosting like, sometimes 20, 25, 30 events a quarter. And while they're not in person, they still take that same level of detail and logistics and planning from a creative aspect, from a logistical aspect to stand up and execute. So I think even though we're in this virtual age right now, like it's, and we're not like wearing our boots in the mud, it's kind of different and even more detail oriented, I would say. So.
Yeah, you guys have, I mean, the reality is I think with events, there's just, it's all these disparate people coming together. So in a, in the corporate world, and not just to focus on that, everybody's kind of within the framework of the organization, and you have this long-term structure that people over time have been able to, kind of build off of and make more efficient, where you guys come into, whether it's a hall with all kinds of different people and have to coordinate that really fast, but there's all the same components. So to me, in a time where there's most change and fluctuation and all of that, that skill set to me is really, seems to be really valuable. So I feel like there's got to be a lot of opportunity for folks as they kind of open up their eyes to what's out there.
Yeah, and I feel like we have this, we'll maybe talk about this later, but just like paid versus like free events, like all of InVision's events are free, which is kind of new to me, like coming from like a Superfly world, where it was, our whole revenue model was based on ticket sales and sponsorship, and now like our whole model is based on pipe generation and revenue generation with our customers, and hoping that we'll be able to, create new opportunities and close new opportunities. So I feel like that's like kind of like a twisted mindset that, it took me a while to fully understand, going in-house.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So tell me, what do you think the corporate event world can learn from the festival and experiential world, Lisa?
I feel like they're just very similar. Like they're very similar. Like corporate events don't have to be like corporate events. Like corporate events don't have to be stale. Like there is so much experiential and creativity that can go into corporate events, and has already started to go into them. I think in the past few years, a lot of brands started using experiential to elevate their brand and create an opportunity to like hands-on interact with their customers and audience. And I know Superfly was starting to do that back when I was there with our sponsors, and starting to create experiences for them. So I think really there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah. And Lindsay, obviously Superfly has been kind of on the bleeding edge of this for a while now. Do you see that this kind of world is melding together even more?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we were approached by a few brands that wanted us to produce their yearly sales conferences, more of like a experiential festival style rather than the stale conference room. But I think it definitely was a learning curve for myself personally. We often tried to, in the earlier years, kind of festivalize the B2B sales conferences, which it doesn't work that way. And I think we kind of learned the hard way that not everything is a festival, although that's, where we come from and most of what we know. So I think there is a bit to learn from the corporate space on how to really make these news events impactful, and not, we're producing an event for 2,000 professionals, not 100,000 kids to a show in a field. It's different. But I think, what's really important and interesting to learn from the corporate space is it is a bit more polished, and it has to be a bit more polished. And I think we have taken some of that. I definitely have taken some of that into the festival and experiential world, just ensuring that, what we're producing is very, very high quality.
And when you guys get together, I know oftentimes you are talking about, other things outside of work, you guys are friends and have lives outside of work. But when you do talk about work, what are the things that you're sharing with each other, and what are you looking to learn from each other in that regard?
Yeah, surprisingly, we really don't talk about work. Although even I feel like when we worked together, we didn't really talk about work. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's really fascinating, what Lisa's doing right now. She's got a Zoom call with 10 different breakout rooms and all of these people and screens and devices. And I don't know how to use that technology. And I think that's something that I would love to learn from her. And yeah, I think that's
interesting. Yeah. So when you think about kind of this latest virtual events, walk me through kind of with what you guys have both done. You both have done some really interesting events as of late. Walk me through what that pre-planning, the production and post-event recap look like. I know there's a lot there, but what is that? Was the planning cycle shorter or longer than normal? There's obviously a bunch of questions that I could go through, but kind of give me that perspective and what that looked like with some of these later events that you've done as of recent.
Sure. I can kick it off. We kind of got our intro into the virtual world, as did a lot of companies, in March. So we produced Small Business Live a couple months ago, which was a live stream fundraiser that supported at-risk small businesses that were impacted by the pandemic. And essentially what we did was we gathered talent to perform within their favorite small business. That's a local, record shop or a coffee shop, stuff like that. And they really, kind of spoke to the viewers of why it is so important to support small businesses, especially right now. The planning cycle definitely was a bit shorter. It's not as, it's not as long and drawn out as an on-ground event, especially when you're coming to a new city. It could take upwards of 5 years to really get on the ground and in with the city and get permits and really be established. But it was a new territory for us, which definitely had a learning curve of being able to push out a live stream to a bunch of different platforms. So I came in as the talent producer to work with the artist managers, make sure that they had all the recording equipment that they needed, make sure that they were set up in the small business. The small business was actually comfortable having them in there. Everything was safe and sanitized and everyone was distanced. And yeah, it was a really interesting project to work on. And especially right now, it feels really good to work on something that is, beneficial to the most at risk or some of the most at risk folks right now. Yeah, I think it was a really good success.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. And how about you, Lisa?
Yeah. So we have a few different types of events. Like we have our one-to-one, our one-to-few, our one-to-many, if we want to get into the B2B go-to-marketing business terms. But we'll have some events that are account-based, for our customers, that could be, product related, or it could be content related, or, some sort of learning related event. I'd say one of my favorite events that we've been doing is we actually have our own documentary called Squads. It came out this year. So we've been kind of rolling out film screenings, which I was super excited about doing those in person, but luckily it can be streamed virtually, which is great. But that was one of the events that I did in New York, is I went into JP Morgan Chase office and screened a film and had a panel discussion and had a dinner around it, which was really cool. And so we've kind of taken that now and we've been doing them virtually with our customers and ensuring that we have this engaging panel that basically ties the content back to what they do in the office each day. So it's kind of a big production. It's we're doing a screening. We have people from different computers chiming in through a live stream. Sometimes it's recorded and shared. We're working with our customers on, what technology they use in-house. Are we providing the technology? So there's lots of different types of planning that go into them. But I would say just like any in-person event, these virtual events require a work back timeline. They require a run of show and a copy doc and a list of email communications. They require a project management tracker for all of the different marketing ops tasks that need to happen on the back end, or any new landing pages that need to be created, and illustrations and graphics that need to go with that. And especially with all these different partner screenings, you have to look at your partner's brand guidelines and make sure that you're able to publish it and launch it with their permission. There's so many little small details that go into one of these 1 hour events. So yeah, I feel it feels the same, but different.
Interesting. Yeah. And you mentioned technology a few times, and obviously that's a key part of all of this. what technology, and maybe this is an obvious question, but maybe not. So what technology do you think is going to really advance in all of this?
I think definitely like virtual like streaming devices. So like I feel like Zoom right now is one of the tops like for like video quality and audio quality, but also like like landing pages and event hubs. Like I think those are starting to evolve to also like Cvent, for instance. They're a database, but I know that they've started to create their own virtual event platform. I think a lot of platforms are starting to try and create more offerings that are that kind of do everything.
Mm,
Yeah.
interesting. And how about you, Lindsay?
I think, what we've seen is I guess on the talent side, a lot of artists are starting to build like an arsenal of video recording equipment, which it doesn't seem to have been the case in the past, just to gear up and prepare for the influx of live streams that they've been doing. So that's been really interesting.
Fascinating. And is there anything that you think would have taken like 5 or 10 years that has just been accelerated in all of this?
I'll go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess if not for a pandemic, I'm curious if, artists seem to be very connected with their fans right now, especially doing kind of more casual live streams and reading comments and responding. I don't know if it's more of like a 5 to 10 years thing, but I think if not for a pandemic, I don't know if there would have been as much, closer feeling casual connection with fans.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And you feel the same, Lisa, on your end?
Yeah, I feel just like being able to connect with, well, in your world it's artists and fans, and in my world it's like executives and like stakeholders and their teammates, like junior designers. Like I feel like people, it's just so much easier to connect with stakeholders and people that you might have not wanted to walk into their office in person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, is there an aspect of virtual that you think the market is still trying to figure out?
Yeah. I mean, kind of something also that goes back a little bit to technology that's progressed, but is also still trying to be figured out. I think virtual reality events, I know like the Travis Scott Fortnite event was a huge success. And I think a lot of companies are trying to figure out how to get more interactive events where it feels like you're actually participating or you're in an experience. I think they really nailed that. And it seems like a lot more of these virtual reality companies are kind of getting quicker to bring out the like technology in that sense.
Yeah, fascinating. I've seen some. I think there was an article yesterday on like the artificial intelligence around kind of the visualization of a person and what you can do there based off of all kinds of data that's flowing through. It looks fascinating, a little scary, but we'll see where it goes, because I think the whole article is about do you really know if the other person you're talking to is actually a human being?
Yeah.
And it's definitely pretty crazy to go down that whole
Yeah.
And so are there some areas you're most interested in seeing involved in all of this?
Yeah, I think I'm interested in just seeing how event producers take the virtual world when we are all back together on the ground. I'm curious if there's going to be opportunities for fans to engage with an event during the actual event that maybe are in another country or across the states or wherever it may be. How are we going to mix virtual with in person and do it well and in an interactive sense, just for more viewership and I guess a lower barrier to entry without having to travel.
Yeah. And what do you think the biggest operational challenge is going to be as things start to come, not back to normal, but as things start to come back?
I can start on that one. I think there's still like definitely like a barrier to entry when it comes to like purchasing tickets for something you're not sure you can commit to. So like right now, I'd say even with free virtual events, we're seeing a lot of like attrition, and like a lot of conference organizers are seeing even like up to 50% drop off even for like paid tickets, which is crazy to think about. But people are just having like, I think we can all relate that we're just kind of having a hard time making plans for like 2 days from now, especially when you're not sure if you're going to be feeling well, or, you know, your family is not going to be feeling well. So I think everyone is being kind of cautious with purchasing in general, but especially for an experience.
Yeah, I think also just making sure that the content, you know, it is interesting and draws people in. You know, it's very easy to tune in and tune out of something online right now. So I think an operational challenge in that sense would just be, you know, producing something that really holds the viewer, and makes them feel like they're actually a part of it.
Yeah, I can imagine that's going to be something that's always evolving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I will say, like, you know, we're already seeing like restaurants step up, and stores and retail like stepping up their health precautions and safety. And it's like, that's not a cheap thing to do. So I think also just like we're finding the funds to be able to have like that premium, like safe, like experience that levels up with what people are expecting right now.
Yeah. And definitely, you know, back to the budget topic, it is very expensive to produce a live stream, in terms of actually producing the content. And most of the live streams that we've seen have been free or for donation, supporting a certain cause. So it's, you know, there's no real money being made by just producing a live stream. That's free.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, the budget's got to come from somewhere, right? And especially when you go back to like a hybrid type event, it's going to be interesting to see some of the areas that suffer because of the money that's flowing into that, or the health and safety precautions that you're having to spend on.
Yeah, I feel like it's also interesting because when this all kind of started, like, you know, musicians and artists were doing work and sharing content for free, like as, you know, a way to give back. And now that we're kind of changing and they're needing money again, I'm sure, like how do we go from like free to paying for talent again? Like I'm seeing this, you know, my gym as well, and all of these fitness instructors online sharing their content. Like how long is that sustainable for?
Yeah, I think that's when it becomes, you know, more of an experience that you feel like you're gaining something from, is when you're gonna put some money down, whether it be, you know, receiving a merch package or something in the mail, or just you know, there's got to be something that people will feel like they will pay for in order.
Yeah. And how do you think like networking and engagement will evolve?
I feel like in one way right now it's like really easy to network. Like I think I mentioned that earlier. It's easier. It's a lower barrier to entry. Like I can just be like, hey, do you want to hop on a call? Or like, hey, do you want to hop on a Zoom? Hey, do you want to hop on a Google Hangout? But I feel like there's so many people wanting to connect right now, especially with people in our job market looking for new opportunities and asking for advice on the next best steps, that it's almost like becoming overwhelming. But like to think about yourself, to think about others, and I kind of just like want to like shut my computer and like close my eyes.
Yeah.
It's definitely a double-edged sword. I mean, there's a lot of people looking to make a transition just in and out of the industry, and you know, when you've been on your computer all day and then you have to take a call or another Zoom meeting to chat through stuff, it's honestly pretty exhausting. But I think that hopefully we find a way to find a happy balance.
Yeah.
So you kind of both have touched on this a little bit, but what do you think the next couple months look like for you?
Go ahead, Lindsay.
I mean,
we're going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's trial and error right now, and it's making sure that if you are putting something into the world that is, you know, a physical experience, that you are being as safe and cautious and just buttoned up as you possibly can be. I know that, you know, nobody really wants to be the first back, and it's just really evaluating, you know, the risk of putting dates to a calendar and what that really looks like, and also just your own credibility to not keep shifting forward and forward and forward. But it's a really, it's a tough balance, and I think we're all just kind of absorbing as much as we can right now to understand what we can do, how we can do it in the safest way, and just educating ourselves and knowing that we're probably not going to be back to normal or to 2019 or years before that anytime soon. So, you know, instead of dwelling on that, how can we create experiences that are impactful going forward?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think out of sheer state of kind of panic and everything at the beginning, it was like, all right, well, we can plan now lots of events. Like we can have like 3 events a week because we're not all traveling. So I think we got into this kind of cadence of like, all right, let's fill the calendar. And I think that is already starting to evolve due to fatigue from so many events happening. So I think even personally and professionally, like less is more, and being really thoughtful about what you're actually executing and making sure it's resonating and people, and it's actually worth your time. So I think, yes, creating experiences that are actually meaningful and having an impact is the goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even for the virtual world too, you know, I think myself also, like, I feel like I have a little bit of live stream fatigue, and, you know, there's just so much of it. And I think everyone was very quick to push something out. So I hope that the next couple months, like Lisa's saying, there are, you know, impactful things that are happening that continue to keep our attention.
Yeah, it seems like I keep saying this, but it seems like it's evolving. I'm sure that what you guys are rolling out at Superfly, Lindsay, is going to be incredibly, you know, unique, and it's pretty exciting. And obviously, with what you're doing, Lisa, it just seems like that stuff. People are going to learn more and more every time folks like you guys put something out there. That's going to, you know, help the rest of the industry. I guess my last question is if you could pick my next interview pairing, who would you want to see kind of talk, and what would you want them to kind of go through?
We thought about this for a while. We're like, do we say some friends? Who do we go with?
Yeah,
like a very interesting pairing. I think, you know, what we kind of came to was, you know, hearing from some vendors that have really been struggling and out of work, and what, you know, what that's looked like for them. What are ticketing companies doing right now? You know, what are festival and, you know, event on-site vendors doing right now? How have they pivoted to, you know, a lot of tent companies have pivoted to put up temporary hospitals and testing sites, and, you know, everyone just seems to be kind of innovating what their business is, just not knowing what the future holds.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it'd be really interesting to hear, you know, that initial shock of cancellation after cancellation after cancellation, and just trying to stay afloat.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And like, when you think about it, like you have your caterers, you have your crews, like these people are capable of building buildings and providing food to first responders. Like those are the kind of opportunities that I hope, you know, have arisen for our vendors in the meantime, because like their skills definitely lie beyond festivals. They can really be providing things to help people's lives right now.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time, and really fascinating to get both your perspectives. And you know, I've been excited about doing this for a while, and it definitely didn't disappoint. It's just really interesting to, you know, hear your perspective, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do it.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Thank you.